I'm Brandon Fields, the voice of Private Josh Woods on The Haven Chronicles. You're listening to SciFi Haven.
Welcome to SciFi Haven. Last time on SciFi Haven, we reviewed the introduction to Professor with a song in the episode Time Can Be Rewritten, which was our review of the episodes Silence in the Library and Force of the Dead. Today we are saying goodbye to the most popular Doctor of the revival of Doctor Who, David Tennant. Don't worry, we will be bringing him back in a few weeks for our review of The Day of the Doctor, which was the 50th anniversary episode and my introduction to Doctor Who way back in 2013. The two-parter, The End of Time, Parts 1 and 2, aired on Christmas Day 2009 and New Year's Day 2010. These episodes were the 5th Christmas special and the first New Year special, following the Christmas Invasion, The Runaway Bride, Voyage of the Damned, and The Next Doctor. It was, like I mentioned, the first time we had a New Year special, which we wouldn't have another until New Year's 2019, almost a decade later. As we have done in our previous episodes, we are going to be doing a recap of these episodes using IMDb. The first part. Forewarned, and with a sense of foreboding, the Doctor races to return to Earth, fearing the Master will somehow return. Reunited with Wilfred Mott, the Doctor desperately tries to locate the Master, only to find out he is being held by Joshua and Abigail Naismith, who are using alien technology to create a new future for Earth. It is too late, however, for the Master has now turned everyone on Earth into his own image, the Master Race. Little does he realize the greatest danger awaits them all. In the second half, with almost everyone on Earth now recast in his image, the Master controls the Earth. He is shocked, however, when he realizes one person hasn't changed. Donna Noble. The Doctor soon understands what the pounding in the Master's head is. It is the Time Lords who are trying to return and re-establish the planet Gallifrey. If they succeed, it will mean the last great Time War will restart and all the horrors which came with it. In order to stop Restilian's plan, the Doctor must make a choice. Finally, the Ood's prophecy for the Doctor has come true, and he takes the TARDIS on a trip to see friends for one last time before he regenerates. During our rewatch and research that we do for all of our episodes, I noticed a high number of continuity to previous and future episodes. There is such a large list, which you can find on the TARDIS fandom website. A link will be placed in our show notes. But our personal favorite that was listed would be when the Doctor visits the Power State, just after midnight, New Year's Day 2005, when the Doctor meets Rose Tyler for the first and the last time, and he says she will have a really great year. I have said multiple times that he really should have said, "You will have a fantastic year," which would have been a callback to Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor. The reason why I say this is my personal favorite is because of how much I love Rose Tyler. Not only was she the first companion I got to really know, as I had only seen The Day of the Doctor before meeting Rose Tyler, but also because I had such a crush on Billie Piper growing up, while she was a pop star with her song, Because I Want To, which came out in 1998. It is such a great, amazing song. It's a fantastic song, as the Doctor would say. I recommend you go watch the music video on YouTube. I will put a link to the music video in the show notes as well. If you have been listening to older episodes of Sci-Fi Haven, I have never hid how much I disliked Donna Noble as a companion, but her grandfather, Wilfred Mott, was such an amazing character in Doctor Who, and as part of my research I found out that Donna and Wilfred were actually the first companions, which were related to each other. Well, if you are like so many people who assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, then you could say that the character Jenny from The Doctor's Daughter was truly the first related companion, as the casting of Georgina Moffat, no relation to Stephen Moffat, the showrunner, but she was the daughter of the fifth Doctor, Peter Davidson, and after this episode, she became the wife of David Tennant. While I was rewatching part 1 for this podcast episode, I noticed during that after the Naismiths were reviewing The Return of the Master, he yelled, "Christmas is cancelled." They seem to be taking The Return of the Master a lot better than the people of Earth here in 2020, having to potentially cancelling events such as Thanksgiving and Christmas, as well as an unknown number of personal events such as weddings, funerals, family reunions, you name it, all because of the coronavirus COVID-19. Oh man, I just realized as I'm recording this how dated these episodes are going to be in the future, like listening to Trek FM's The Ready Room or Hyper Channel podcasts, which I do listen to almost daily, and, well, don't tell Trek FM this, but I'm almost 6.5 years behind watching that episode. You know, maybe I should just edit this out. Nah. But episodes like this one actually do have a strong personal touch, as during the scene in the junkyard where the homeless are getting snacks from a Meals on Wheels van. Well, I had to get meals from a van like this one earlier this year during the COVID-19 crisis. So I actually praised the series for showing this scene, to show that not everyone is as good as we'd like to admit. Fuck. I never thought I'd actually say that on public record. I guess my podcast is really for opening up myself. Very similar to what my friend Mary did with her podcast. But, well, hey, this podcast is... I admitted that I came out as non-binary almost 2 months ago to the day. Anyways, let's get back on track. Back to this episode. I do love the callback to the first time we met Donna. When the Doctor and Wilfred are sitting in the diner, they are seeing Donna and talking about her wedding, and how Donna was in her wedding dress in the episode The Runaway Bride. That is actually kind of a good throwback. There's going to be a few more going forward. Anyways, about halfway through part 1, we finally get to see the narrator, and it is none other than James Bond himself, Timothy Dalton. I wonder, is it because of this episode why, when you browse sites like Reddit, you have so many people question if James Bond was a Time Lord? And so since if you watched the episode The Lazarus Experiment, and Martha commented, the Doctor looked like James Bond due to his black tie tuxedo, I wonder if Martha would say that Vassilion looked like James Bond as well. When the Doctor and the Master are talking, and they have the scene of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I actually remember shortly after seeing this episode, I used to tap my fingers in the same pattern just to bug my co-workers at Walmart, especially when they were talking about how much they did not like the John Sim version of the Master. I guess I can be kind of annoying to friends when it comes to Doctor Who. So as the Canadian that I am, I'm sorry, but I'm not actually sorry. You know, I wonder if Wilfred's family looks at him strangely as he was talking to the mysterious woman on the TV, who I strongly believe is the Doctor's mother, but was never confirmed. I know that I often get strange looks from my roommates when I'm recording episodes of this podcast, as I often have to do multiple recordings of my podcast to fix audio issues or when I get tongue-tied. But when Wilfred goes into the TARDIS and his daughter Sylvia starts yelling at the pair after the TARDIS has vanished, I do actually laugh every time when Donna asks if Sylvia is yelling at nothing. Especially after Wilfred would say that he would rather spend time with the Doctor than deal with his angry daughter. And with the running gag of "it's bigger on the inside," it has been said so many times in Doctor Who history. Wilfred's comment of "I thought it would be cleaner" is such an oddball comment. It just totally makes sense for Wilfred's personality. But it also kind of reminds me of all of Dr. McCoy's "damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a whatever," when he talks to Captain Kirk throughout the original Star Trek series. I do have one last thing to say before we do move on to part 2, and I love how they used so many different camera angle tricks to hide the face of the actor they use as a body double for President Barack Obama. But they did use a voice clip of the president. I actually thought they had used clips of President Obama, but I had to rewatch the scene a few times to notice it was a body double. Before we discuss part 2 of The End of Time, we want to thank you for listening to Sci-Fi Haven. If you want to support the podcast, you can visit our sponsors, Mixed Tea Energy and Buy Me a Coffee, or help us directly by visiting our Patreon page. With Mixed Tea Energy, gone are the sugary drinks claiming to help you boost energy, only to leave you drained and crashing hours later. Mixed Tea Energy is the next step in healthy energy. You can visit their website at mixedteaenergy.net and use our promo code SFHaven10 to save 10% on your next order. We all know that I love Mixed Tea Energy. In fact, I've been drinking it while recording this episode. But now you can support us by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/SciFi Haven. And you can either buy a coffee membership for us at $3 a month or individual coffees for $2 a month. And well, with my work schedule, I often have to wake up at 5 a.m. I know I need to make a Tim Hortons one soon, so coffee would be appreciated. If you wish to support us directly, you can also join our Patreon page for as little as $1 a month, and you can gain early access to our podcast, usually the day of recording, with the average early access being 3 days in advance of recording. Please note that our reviews of the Haven Chronicles, we publish our review on the Friday after they publish their episode, and we do not have early access to their podcast, so we have to listen to it and record it. That's why we need a couple of days to record it, so there is no early access on that episode. But by supporting us directly on Patreon, you can have your name in our credits as well, for as little as $5 a month. I do want to apologize, this episode won't have early release on Patreon, as we had some technical issues and actually had to record this episode on Saturday, the day after it was supposed to be published, when we normally record a week before release, but our work schedule has been so busy. You know, you may be asking yourself why I'm asking for your support by using Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. But the truth of the matter is, hosting our podcast and even buying Crave TV monthly does add up. And while I do want to grow the podcast to the point where maybe to have guests on our show, like how I was a guest on Open Channel a few weeks ago, and while the monthly cost of running our show is around $30 a month, I am not expecting this show to be profitable. I would like to at least cover some of the costs, and that's why I have sponsors for our show. Now let's discuss part 2 of The End of Time. The opening scene of part 2, after the recap, was the biggest flash forward to a future episode that I think has ever happened, when the Time Lord Council reports the Doctor possesses the moment, which they have foreseen that he will use to end the war. For people who watched this live in 2010, I believe they would have no idea what the Time Lord Council is talking about until November 23rd, 2013, with the 50th anniversary episode, The Day of the Doctor, which, you may remember, was the introduction to Doctor Who for myself. You know, as this episode gets closer and closer to the end, the more and more I am happy to say the countdown of never seeing Donna Noble again is getting happy, but I do have to say I am sorry, as the Doctor does refer to Donna as his best friend. Personally, I wouldn't call Donna his best friend, but I guess when I'm doing a rewatch, I tend to watch episodes with Rose, Jack, Amy, Rory, or River in them. Not Donna. The scene when the Master and the Doctor are fighting, the Master is demanding that the location of the TARDIS, and the Doctor says the Master is bone dead stupid. I do question if the line saying that the girl is 1 inch too tall, was that a Star Wars reference?
Too little short for a stormtrooper.
Huh? Oh, the uniform.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
You know, I hope Disney doesn't come after me for using that Star Wars clip. But if that wasn't a pop culture reference, I'm most certain that the line, "worst rescue ever," just a few minutes later, was definitely a reference to comic book guy from The Simpsons. In the scene where the Time Lord Council throws a diamond onto the planet, is mentioned it is a white point star. I did not actually know until preparing for this podcast episode that it was never before mentioned and has never been referenced again. I always thought that it was a throwback to the original 60s to 80s era of Doctor Who. I love the scene where Wilfred and the Doctor are talking about ages, and how Wilfred reflects on his time back in World War II. And the scene where the Doctor mentions he is 906 years old. While looking up the age of the Doctor, there was such confusion. But as Professor Song says, Rule 1 is the Doctor lies. So who knows about how old the Doctor actually is? Since in the episode Twice Upon a Time, the first Doctor regenerated at the age of 450. But shortly after regeneration, the second Doctor told Ben and Polly that it has been over 750 years since he left his home. And the third Doctor told Liz Shaw that his life was several thousand years. Yet the fourth Doctor was only 748 years old, and the fifth Doctor said he was 813 at the time of his regeneration. And the sixth Doctor, he was over 900 years old. The seventh Doctor had his 1000th birthday with Ace and Bernice. The eighth Doctor calculated his age to be 1012. But he may have lost count, as he said, so he decided to start counting the age of the regeneration. So he said during the book Vampire Science he was only 3 years old. But during the episode The Day of the Doctor, it was mentioned that the War Doctor was approximately 400 years younger than the Matt Smith counterpart, which would bring him down to a young 800 or so years old. He's aging younger. The ninth Doctor told Rose that he was 900 years old during the episode Aliens of London, back in the first season. But in the episode The Empty Child, he had been travelling for 900 years in the TARDIS. It seems that once the 2005 revival, he was aging much like how they do in Star Trek. A year in 21st century Earth for the viewers would be a year for the Doctor as well. Oh man, I just went on quite the tangent talking about ages. I guess it is because age is such a tricky subject, as I am turning 34 years old in under a week of recording this episode. Let's time to get back on track with the episode. The mass panic after the planet of Gallifrey appears near Earth. I can almost imagine that our planet would have been destroyed by such a large mass appearing out of nowhere. The joys of science fiction, am I right? I never knew during the first watch of this episode why the Doctor didn't like the return of the Time Lords. I actually agreed with Wilfred about them returning. But in the 7 years since I first watched this episode, I have really gotten to know the storyline of Doctor Who, which is the reason why I started SciFi Haven, that I started with Doctor Who, instead of doing shows like Star Trek. But we would have had such competition in the Star Trek field, like my friends over at Trek FM, Holosuite Media, the United Federation of Podcasts, and many, many others. Those three networks, Trek FM, Holosuite, and UFP, I listen to their shows quite regularly. Just remember, don't tell Trek FM I'm 6.5 years behind on listening to their podcast. Or did I edit that part out? I can't remember. But look how powerful the Lord President is, as he was able to quickly undo all of the Master's work and return all the humans back to their unaltered selves. Oh man, I just realized how long this episode of review has been. So, as the Doctor has to collect his final reward, which is a chance to say goodbye to everyone, let's reflect on all of the cameos at the end of this episode. We start with Martha and Mickey, who are now married. That's a big shock. But I guess that means that Rose did choose the Meta-Crisis Doctor back in Journey's End. Next, we saw Luke and Sarah Jane Smith. And while you can tell, Sarah Jane Smith did seem to know that this was goodbye for the Doctor. Then we got to see Captain Jack Harkness, who, like many others, drank heartache away at the local pub. Myself included, Jack. But then Jack was introduced to Alonzo Frame from the spaceship Titanic back in the Voyage of the Damned. Then we got to meet Variety Newman, the granddaughter of Joan Redfern, who we met in Human Nature. Then we heard that the Doctor got to meet Jeffrey Noble, who was Donna's father, and the Doctor bought a single quid, which the Doctor then used to buy a lottery ticket for Donna and her new husband Sean Temple's future, as it is implied that it is the winning numbers for a large triple rollover draw. If I have any UK listeners, please comment on our social media what a triple rollover really means. I'm thinking it's pretty big. And as I mentioned at the very end of this episode, right before regeneration, the Doctor went to visit Rose and Jackie. I'm not going to go into great details about Rose and Jackie as I did at the start of this episode. I want to thank you for listening to today's episode of Sci-Fi Haven. I do want to apologize once again as this show was late. We had some technical issues, but we were able to still get it out only about 36 hours later than we wanted. So, thank you for listening. I hope you will join us on our various social media platforms. You can join our Facebook page, Sci-Fi Haven, by visiting facebook.com/Sci-Fi Haven, or join our Facebook group by searching for The Communicator in the Facebook search field, or join the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag Sci-Fi Haven, or tagging us at Sci-Fi_Haven. We shall be back with the next episode being the 5th season episode, Vincent and the Doctor. If we have time, we will have it out on Christmas Day for our listeners. If not, we will have it out early in the week following Christmas. We are still going to be continuing our review of our favourite Doctor Who episodes in the new year, but we are planning on doing a live commentary for the New Year special. I'm just trying to find somebody to do the commentary with. If not, it's going to be one of those special episodes for us. We'll see you again. Thank you for listening.